Welcome to the Ranchise Masterclass. In this masterclass, you're going to learn how you, as a business owner living in the suburbs, can become a farmer who produces all of the meat that your family can eat without actually becoming a farmer. Now, what do I mean by all of the meat that you and your family can eat? One ranchise can produce over 800 pounds of meat. That's enough to feed you, your wife, and your children. And the cool part is that you don't need to have any farming experience or any farming knowledge. You also don't have to give up your career or give up your business. We have world-class professional ranch managers that manage your ranchise for you. So all you have to do is make one upfront payment, and all of a sudden you have the livestock led out here to Little G Ranch, Panoplia Ranch, or one of our other Axe properties, and you have professional ranch managers who take care of your animals for you. Now, with that being the case, let's go in live to our studio where Adam Parks can let you understand how the ranchise works and how it operates.
All right, welcome everybody. As TJ said, my name is Adam Parks. I'll go through a little bio on myself here in a minute and tell you who I am and why I'm qualified to do this. But the main reason you're all here is this: restoring man's original purpose. When we talk about ranchising and all the things that TJ just referenced in terms of your ability to become a producer instead of a consumer, I think it's so important that we start with why we're doing this from a standpoint of how we run our business. And that is, we do everything the way God intended. We try desperately to do everything the way God intended. And one of the things that God intended was that man had an original purpose, and that was to be a producer. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to build heaven on earth, and you're going to be part of it. So what does that mean? It means me to start with. As I said, my name is Adam Parks. I am now the Senior Vice President of Axe Decentralized Real Estate. TJ hired me a little less than a year and a half ago to come in and run the food company, Wanted Raw Foods. As he mentioned, I kind of immediately saw that there were some challenges with ranchising the way it was originally designed. I did some redesigns on it a couple of times, and now here we are with the product that you're about to see. My background is I grew up on a 1,500-acre sheep and cattle ranch in Northern California. Grew up doing all the country boy things. I was in 4-H, FFA. I helped run my family farm. I took over running the farm completely when I was 14, when my stepfather had to take a job in the city because ranching's hard and doesn't pay much. And went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, a pretty nationally renowned ag school, and that's what I studied there. Had a little 20-year stint where I did some other things outside of ag, and then in 2009 got back into it. That led me on this journey. In 2010, my wife and kids and I built Victorian Farmstead Meat Company, which in Northern California was a fairly well-known direct-to-consumer, regeneratively farmed meat company and butcher shop. And then I was introduced to Axe in the summer of 24 and reached out to TJ thinking I had some ideas for him. My ideas were different than his, but his were better. And so here we are. I went to work for them in November of 24. So what does that mean? We are creating turnkey, off-grid, regenerative homesteads and decentralized communities that make faith-based, self-sufficient living simple, accessible, and profitable. The faith-based thing is super important to us. It does not mean you have to be Christian. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what nationality you are. None of that stuff matters. We do everything based on biblical principles, and I think that those basic, be a good person, do the right thing. And it's super important to us that we run our business that way. And that's all you have to worry about as far as being faith-based is be a good human. Start there and everything else will kind of take care of itself, right? Here is our ecosystem. So Axe is a fairly broad company. Visio Day LLC is the umbrella company that holds all these. We have Axe Decentralized Real Estate. That's where we acquire large ranch land, anywhere from 500 to 2,000 acres. We subdivide those into large plots, anywhere from 5 to 25, 30 acres. We sell those to people that want this lifestyle, this off-grid, regenerative farming lifestyle, homeschooling your kids, home birthing your babies, being out of the centralized system, which we're going to talk extensively about today. We also have Axe Homes. Johanna Johansson is our Director of Residential Development. She and her department are there to help you build your family compound. And that can mean your primary residence, it can mean small ADUs, it can mean your barns, your stables, whatever you want on your family compound. We have the Ranch Hand League. That is our ranching division run by Justin Vincent. Justin has a ridiculous amount of ranching experience here in East Texas, where we're based out of. And he runs ranching operations for us across both our Texas and Florida ranch and soon to be our Tennessee ranch, God willing, in the next couple of weeks. And then finally, we have Wanted Raw Foods, now headed by Kevin Charnoto, who is our general manager for Wanted Raw Foods. And that is our food distribution system. So as we process animals on the ranch that our franchisees own, that meat gets sold direct to consumer all across the country. We're super excited because in the next couple of months, we are going to be launching raw dairy in East Texas. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. All right, Ranchising 101, how to build a profitable regenerative agriculture ranch, no land or ranching experience required. I've got a whole slide in here that talks about what we are not, but it's really important that you understand you do not need to know the difference between a cow and a pig. If you've never shoveled manure or driven a tractor or ridden a horse in your life, no worries. I've got all that covered. Your goal here is to become a producer, and in that role, you're going to fund our production and our infrastructure through purchasing a franchise that's going to give you food security for generations to come. In the next couple hours, and it'll be about an hour and a half, and we'll leave a little time at the end for Q&A, we're going to talk about our broken food system, the power of decentralization, how the franchise was born, the investment and generational impact that investment has, that franchising is passive income, meaning, again, you don't have to have any experience or put any time into it, a little bit behind the scenes of what we do and how we do it, and how you can get started today. And then, like I said, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. One of the things that's really important to me, I don't know how many of you have ever seen a timeshare presentation, but my wife and I, that's how we used to vacation when we were young and broke, is we would get those little notices in the mail that said, hey, for $400, you can go to spend a week in Hawaii, and all you got to do is sit through a little 90-minute timeshare presentation, or go to Vegas and, you get a room and everything comp if you go there and you listen to their pitch. One of the things that those have in common is they always wait till the end to tell you what the money is. I'm not going to do that to you. I like to be super transparent. I try to underpromise and overdeliver as much as possible. And so we're going to get into the cost of this right up front. So what's the difference between landowner and non-landowner? If you choose to buy a parcel with us because you are desperate for this kind of lifestyle, you want your family compound, you want your family to get out of the suburban rat race, you want to remove yourself from the centralized system, you can become a landowner with us by buying a parcel at one of our ranches. That makes you a landowner. You can franchise without ever owning any land. You don't even have to own your own home. We can house your franchise and manage it for you just like we would if you lived with us. Just a difference in cost because there's obviously cost for the land acquisition since you don't own land with us. So we sell franchises as low as a quarter franchise. That's going to make more sense in a few minutes. So a quarter franchise, which is our minimum entry point, if you own land with us, is going to be $25,000. And if you are a non-landowner, it's going to be $37,500. I know I've got this broken into quarters so that you can see that a 1.0 franchise, that's what we call a full franchise, is $100,000, and of course a 1.0 non-lander is $150,000. I want to be clear about something though. I do not have to sell these in exact quarter increments. You can have a meeting with me and say, hey, Adam, I've got $47,526. I will build you a franchise that fits that because of our animal calculator and how I build out custom franchises. You have total control of the animals that go into your franchises. I've got folks that, for whatever reason, don't want pigs in their franchise. I've got other people that insist they don't want any poultry in their franchise. Does not matter to me. It's all customizable. I built the system. I know how to make it so that you get exactly what you want out of it. Okay, our broken food system. How did we get to where we are today? Really, anytime you want the answer to a question, I find that it is super valuable to go back in history and look at how we got to where we are with this problem. Our problem today is the broken food system. And if you go back, it's really cool because we're at 2026, which, as most of you are going to remember, is the 250th anniversary of our great country. But if you go back to our founding fathers, there was a war of two worlds with our founding fathers. Sounds familiar, right? It seems like it's been that way for a long time. Well, it goes all the way back to 1776. On one hand, you had the agrarians led by Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson favored a decentralized country. He favored a country that was small independent farmers that would drive the economy. Remember in 1776, way before the Industrial Revolution, everything was based on farming. He favored letting these small independent family farms throughout our country, as we were primarily on the east and moving west, to be the basis of the economy for this country. The rank of order would have been city, county, state, federal, right? You start with your local small farms and in their little towns throughout the eastern seaboard, and then it went to the county level, and then it got to the state level, and then it got to the federal level, but it was driven by the small local folks. On the other side of that coin, you had the authoritarians led by Alexander Hamilton. He favored a very centralized system. So heavily centralized banking, heavily centralized federal government, overreach by the government, as we've come to know and love. And the idea there was that the big father government should tell us how to run our lives. The government was at the center of everything in his world. And those two factions were at war with each other in 1776 as they developed what would become United States of America. What this means is that we've become a very centralized system. If you go back and look at COVID in 2020, we proved something very powerful, and that is that in this country, we have a very efficient delivery system. Every one of us has gone on to Amazon or Walmart or whatever and ordered stuff that can be delivered to your house within hours, if not a couple of days. Super efficient. However, what we also found is it is super fragile. One little grain of sand in the cogs of that machine and all hell breaks loose. A perfect example of that. Everybody remember the paper products aisle in your grocery stores when COVID first broke out in March of 2020. No paper towels, no toilet paper, no nothing, right? That's because our distribution system in that instance failed miserably under the pressure of COVID. People start panic buying, shelves are empty, nobody knows. I've still got a box of 1-ply Kirkland toilet paper that I bought that we will never use, but that's sitting in my pantry right now because we panic bought just like everybody else did. So what does that mean in terms of how do we fix it? What do? We decentralize, and we've seen brilliant examples of this already. I know I've already got it on the screen behind me, but if we were live and in person, I would ask you to raise your hands. Who can tell me the biggest taxi company in the country? Obviously, that's Uber. Who can tell me the biggest bookstore in the country? Obviously, that's Amazon. And who is the biggest hotel chain? And this one is a stumper because people tend to go with Hilton or Marriott or whatever. It's actually Airbnb. What do all these things have, these companies have in common? What they have in common is they don't really own anything, right? When you look at Uber, they don't have a fleet of Uber cars. They count on you and me to contract with them and agree to drive people around in our personal vehicles, and we get a piece of the action. Same with Amazon. Amazon, I know Amazon's got their own house brands now, but when they started out as a giant bookstore. I could write a book, publish it myself, and then put it out on Amazon for everybody to buy from Amazon, and Amazon took a piece of the pie. Same with Airbnb. They don't own a single hotel building. They're counting on you and I to put our ADUs, our extra bedroom, our second house on their system so that people have a place to stay that's not a hotel. We use Airbnbs in our company all the time. And again, these companies don't own much, right? They are decentralized. That is the model that we're using here. And what I mean by that is a couple things. One is you can look at it on a grand scale in terms of where our ranches are. So for instance, Little G Ranch in East Texas It's about halfway between Houston and Dallas and about the same distance to Austin. That's very much by design. That gives us a distribution node in the south central part of the country that we can distribute from. Now we're about to go online with our Florida ranch in Panoplia, which is about 2 hours south of Orlando, 2 hours southeast of Tampa, and about 3 hours northwest of the northern part of Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. Again, super thought out by design, in that we want, as we get into production with each of these ranches, to access these metropolitan areas for distribution. The more food that we can home deliver and ship locally and have drop points for, the less expensive our shipping costs are. And so just like Amazon has all these massive warehouses throughout the country so that they can very quickly distribute anywhere in the country, we're going to do the same thing with our ranches so that we can easily distribute very quickly throughout the entire nation. Okay, again, a little history here. Back in 1900, 60% of the population grew its own food, and 90% of rural families grew all of their own food. You got to remember, in 1900, again, before the Industrial Revolution, there was not big distribution systems, right? Train was just becoming a bigger thing in terms of moving freight. And it was really important for families to be able to provide their own foods. There was no Walmart, there was no Costco, there wasn't even the local supermarkets, obviously. You had the local hardware store, mercantile, that kind of thing. But if you wanted fresh food, you had to grow it yourself. If we compare that with today, less than 1% of the population grows our own food, right? And that's because everybody's in suburbia. The 99% of the population lives in town. 99% of protein comes from corporate farms. Really important to note, 4 companies control 80% of the protein in this country when we're talking about meat. 2 of those in particular, Smithfield out of Iowa, is wholly owned by China, and JBS, which is the largest beef packer and producer in the country, is wholly owned by Brazil. All of our food we have lost control of. We have no control over it. The government has created a situation where foreign national companies are controlling our food supply. That doesn't feel really great to me, and I assume because you're here, it doesn't feel really great to you either. So let's talk about the scarcity mind shift. And this is a really interesting exercise. There's going to be a little bit of math involved. Don't sweat it. I've done the math for you. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about is this concept that our country is overpopulated and we can't produce enough food to feed our country. We're calling BS on that. It simply is a fallacy that the government has put in front of us to make sure that we think that we are in this dire situation, that we can't produce enough food. So walk with me down this path. Right now in this country, we've got approximately 300 million people, and that equates to about 85 million families. In this country, as far as land goes, the United States of America, the contiguous United States, makes up about 3.2 billion acres of land. Of that land, 1.2, roughly a third, billion acres are in agriculture. And of that 1.2, about half, 614 million acres, are in pasture. That last number, the 600 million acres that are in pasture or grazing land, that's the important number. Everything we do at Axe Decentralized Real Estate and Wanted Raw Foods is based on rotationally grazing our animals. Okay? So, our premise is that with 4.5 acres properly managed, you can feed 10 to 15 families. We've proven this. We are doing it currently. We have our Texas ranch, Little G, as I referenced, in East Texas, that is producing food right now that is feeding a ton of families. And we have 492 acres there. All right? So if we use this as our numbers and our premise, now let's look at the math. So what if we took 10% of the families? We don't need all 85 million families to participate. We just need 10%. So let's use 8.5 million families, and we're going to gift them all 4.5 acres. Okay? If we did that, that would use up 40 million acres, give or take. All right? That's only a little less than 2% of the total acreage in the country. It's about 3% of the ag land in the country. And again, most importantly, it's only 6% of the grazing land. Now, if you do the math on that, that means that these 10%, because they can feed 10 plus families with 4.5 acres, If we gave up 6% of the grazing land to these families, we could feed the entire nation, all 85 million families. 8.5 million families feed 10 million families. That's 85 million families. So the maths, right? And that is the point we're trying to get to. Is this a realistic situation? Of course not. But if you decide to ranchise with us, if you decide to become a parcel owner with us, where you buy 10 acres in Florida, you buy 15 acres in Tennessee, and you ranchise with us, you're going to be able to not only have generational food security for your own family, you're going to get the revenue from us feeding the other 9 to 15 families. That's the secret sauce. That's the magic in this program. How the ranchise was born, from dependent consumer to independent producer. So by owning your own land, consuming chemical-free food, everything we do is as good as you could hope for, right? We don't use corn and soy in our feeds for the animals that get grain. There's no spray on any of our pastures. We do not use toxic herbicides or chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, none of that stuff. Our animals get no hormones. Antibiotics are only given if an animal is truly sick, and that animal never sees the inside of our food system. We will sell it separately. This is as clean a protein as you're ever going to find. Are we the only ones doing this? Absolutely not. There are small family farms all across this country that are doing great things, producing really beautiful foods. I just think we're the only ones that are going to scale it properly. Okay? If you do these things, you need to understand that is your God-given birthright. Food grown the way God intended it, as I referenced in the beginning. What started with us selling raw dairy, and I want to talk about that for a second, this whole concept came from raw dairy. TJ and Kara Vizio Day, our founders and co-CEOs, were fans of raw dairy. They bought it at their local farmers market. They said, man, if we could just, this product is so great, how do we get it out to the masses? And the first thing they found out is you cannot sell raw dairy across state lines. Some states don't let you sell raw dairy at all. Other states, if you're going to sell raw dairy, it has to be dyed and labeled as pet food only. Still totally drinkable because it's the same whether you give it to your pet or you drink it yourself. I'm not going to get into all the nuances of raw dairy. That's a separate class that we will be hosting soon enough because raw dairy is coming very soon to a Wanted Raw Foods website near you. But the concept was TJ and Kara said, all right, screw it. We're going to go and put a ranch in every state so that we can sell raw dairy across this country because we think it's the next big thing that people are going to start to really want as people get back to eating food the way God intended it. So what that turned into was creating true food security for families in every state of the U.S. and beyond while improving the land, not depleting it. Our ranching practices help recover the topsoil. Nothing matters. The best animals in the world on the best grass in the world are never successful unless the topsoil is amazing. And so one of the things that regenerative agriculture does is not only improve the topsoil, but actually grows it, makes it deeper. And we've seen that in Texas in the year and a half that Justin, Vincent, and I have been on board with Axe. We've seen a remarkable change in our somewhat sandy, less than ideal topsoil. We're already seeing improvements. We have less goat weed. We have less noxious weeds in our pasture and more vibrant grasses that are better fodder for our cattle and other animals. We're raising animals the way God intended on the land regeneratively with love. We rotationally graze our animals. If any of you have ever seen stuff from Joel Salatin, who's kind of the godfather of regenerative pasture-raised animals, he is the one that kind of explained it the best, but this is nothing new. You can go back to before Columbus ever got here, and scientists will show you how the bison used to roam across this country. And roam isn't really fair because there was nothing willy-nilly about it. Those bison moved to where the good fodder was seasonally. They always stayed near water. They moved to where the best pasture is. We're doing the same thing. We're just controlling it in smaller areas so that our animals get the best fodder and then move on to the next paddock. We're building systems for people who could never do this on their own. TJ talked about that. I myself am a 4th generation rancher from Northern California. Justin Vincent is an 8th generation rancher. His family started in Kentucky, but he's been in East Texas his whole life. Laurent Lawless, who you saw in the introductory video, down in Florida, 6th generation rancher. I think between the three of us, not our generational knowledge, but just the three of us actively have around 80 years of ranching experience between the three of us. This is experience that even if you started today, you would be hard pressed to get that knowledge. It has to be passed down. These are challenges that ranchers have faced for generations, and we have assimilated that and built it into the system that we're offering you up today. Could you go out and do this on your own? Absolutely. I just think it would be a very miserable experience. One of the more depressing things that you can do is go on your favorite social media channel and look up homesteading. What you're going to find is a whole bunch of people that claim freedom, that claim they've gotten out of the centralized system, but then you start to look into it and dig a little deeper, and they're fairly miserable. They're doing it all on their own. They have no support system. They get no days off. There's no holidays. There's no family vacations, because to do this in the way that they do it singularly, they don't have a support system. They don't have support staff. They don't have people that can come in. And the reason for that is it's really easy to grow enough food to feed your own family and get out of the centralized system. It is not very easy to monetize it and scale it and make it profitable enough so that you can hire a team to do the hard labor for you so that you can enjoy the rewards that come with that. We're offering that to you today. Changing how families see food, health, and freedom. You're here because you care about what you're putting in your body, or you wouldn't have found us. You wouldn't be here. So I'm going to assume a basic level of understanding that the crap people are selling you in the mega marts and the Costco's and the Walmarts and whatnot is largely garbage. It is filled with chemicals. It is filled with growth hormones, filled with antibiotics, all the stuff that we want to avoid. You can go in and you can shop organically, and that will help you some. But even then, you're trusting a government system to tell you that it's organically raised. I don't know about you, but I've got a lot of questions for the government and how they administer things, how they test things, how they oversee things. I would much rather be able to go to somebody's farm and see their practices than trust a designation. One of the things that I'm very proud of with our system is you can come out anytime you want. Let me caveat that, not anytime you want. I need to know you're coming. Not because I'm hiding anything, but we're busy. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got ranch hands that have very full days. They start at sunup and they go till sundown. But you do have the option to come out and visit us and see how we do things, see how we treat the animals, see how docile our dairy cows are because they're handled so well, see what we're feeding the animals, take a look at the feed tag. And we offer that because we want to be super transparent. I want to make sure that you have a comfort level. And what I would propose to you is, if you really want to care about how the food is raised that you feed your family, just ask one simple question. Can I come see how you produce my food? And if you go to your local farmer's market and Joe Schmo that's there selling carrots and broccoli won't let you come to his farm, I would be hesitant to buy from them. They're hiding something. Even if they say, hey, yeah, we offer tours once a month, that's pretty good. Farmers are busy. It's long days. It's a lot of work. So don't expect to just pop in. But if they allow tours, that should give you a pretty significant comfort level. Doesn't mean you even have to take the tour. You are more than welcome to take a tour with us, but just knowing that you can, I think, should give you a pretty significant level of comfort. And finally, it's a movement to be fruitful and multiply, stewarding God's creation to bless families for generation. This is a one-time payment. There are no annual maintenance fees. There are no HOA fees with our parcels, with our land. This is not something that you've got to repay every year. Are there times when you may decide to put more money into this program? Absolutely. That's a way that you can grow it faster. But these ranchises will grow on their own. I'm going to show you how in just a few minutes. And this is a one-time payment that you never have to add more money into. How we provide community crowdfunding, supply chain resilience, and 100% money back guarantee. So I promised you early on I was going to tell you what we're not. This is the important slide. Already some of you have developed questions in your head. Maybe you've put them in the chat. Maybe Haley's already answered some of these. I'm going to go through this slide twice, once now and once towards the end, because these questions come up all the time. And I want to make it super clear what we are not so that there is no confusion as you go through this process and decide if this is a good fit for you. First, we are not a get-rich-quick investment. You are not going to invest $25,000 or even $100,000 into a franchise and get an instant return on your money. If your first concern is ROI, you're probably in the wrong space. I think you're probably not going to be very happy. And I don't want anybody doing this that's not going to be super excited about it. I also don't want anybody doing this that is scraping out the last of their HELOC or emptying their savings account to do this. I want you to come into this super comfortable, knowing that you have the funds to do this. We do offer some financing options if that's better for you. We make them a little expensive on purpose because, again, I don't want anybody suffering to do this. There are other ways that you can get involved if this isn't a good fit for you today, and maybe you get to the point where you are ready to do this. But I want people doing this that are ready, willing, and most importantly, able to do this comfortably. This is not about short-term returns or speculation. A franchise is a long-term play for food security, stability, and generational provision. It's willable. You can put it in a trust. You can put it in an LLC. You can transfer this to anybody you want at any time. You own these animals outright. It is not a high ROI real estate or stock flip. You're not going to buy a franchise today and sell it 5 years from now. Now, could you sell it in an emergency? Let's say you say, you know what, my parents are moving to Italy. We have to go take care of them. I'm moving to Italy. I want to get out. Yes, we will help you do that. And we can do that a number of different ways because, again, you own the livestock. But this is not a short-term flip. This is not an investment that you're going to sell 5, 10 years down the road because your goal needs to be food security first. Yes, I am going to provide what I think is a very fair return for you. But at the end of the day, if that's your driving factor, it's not going to work. You're not going to be happy. You cannot eat a stock or bond. This is a tangible living asset, one that feeds your family, multiplies, and sustains communities. That's what we're here to talk about. This is not a small backyard homestead. This is not you buying a parcel of land and then I put all these animals onto that land and tell you to fend for yourself. These are large ranches. They are working ranches. We have cowboys. We have horses. We herd our cattle just like you see on TV. This is a large-scale operation in a small family farm setting. And so this is not a situation where you're expected to go out and clean out the stalls and move the cattle or any of that. We do all that for you. This isn't hobby farming. You can own a fully operational, professionally managed herd run by seasoned ranchers who do it all for you. This is not a shared or communal operation. You own your own animals. You do not have a herd share with us. You don't put in $50,000 and then get a portion of the proceeds. You own very specifically tagged animals for your franchise, and you win and lose with those animals. What happens if an animal gets struck by lightning and dies? You own that asset. Now, is there livestock insurance and all kinds of things you can do to protect yourself against that? Of course, and we'll talk about that as well. But at the end of the day, these are assets that you own. This is an asset purchase in so much as some of these, like the breeding stock, can actually be depreciated on your taxes, is my understanding. This is the part of the class where I say I am not a financial consultant, I am not a lawyer, and I am not a tax guy. You need to ask your professionals all those questions. But that is my understanding, is that breeding stock can be depreciated on your taxes. You own these outright, so that's up to you to figure out. It is not a concept or a prototype. We're actively doing this in East Texas now, and we'll be rolling out production at the Florida Ranch at Panoplia later this year. So this is something that is actively being done. This is not something that we're just floating out there to see if it'll work. We are not land consultants. This is a biggie. Every time I do one of these classes, sure enough, half dozen people will put in the comments, hey, I own 40 acres in Arkansas. Hey, I've got 150 acres up in Illinois. I can't ranch on your land. We are not consultants. I'm not going to explain to you how we do things on your ranch so that you can do them. Down the road, might we create courses on how we did this once we've got this in many states and we've established ourselves as the dominant force in this industry? Absolutely. But for right now, I only ranchise on axe land. And those are the 3 ranches that I referenced in Texas, Florida, and Tennessee for right now. Okay. Now that we know what we're not, let's talk about the Ranchise Animal Calculator. Now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing. So this is the Ranchise Calculator. And as you can see here in column E, this is where the magic happens. This is where I can go in and manipulate numbers. Okay, this is what I call a standard ranchise. If somebody put up $100,000 and said, give me your baseline ranchise, this is the animal mix that I would give them. What you have in this ranchise is you have one dairy cow. That's a mama cow that's going to calve and produce raw dairy for us. You have a mama beef cow. She is going to be bred and have calves that will either go into production for you or will add to your stock. So with either of these, the dairy or the beef cow, if your mama cow has a female calf, you will have the option to save that calf back and not put it into production, but have it bred when it's appropriate so that you can grow your ranchise. That's how your ranchise grows. I basically extrapolated a 1.0 franchise over 10 years and found that it just over doubled. So in 10 years time, you would have a 2.0 plus franchise, and that'll make more sense to you when we talk about the revenue. You've got 3 market beef in here. These are steers that are there for production. If you buy a 1.0 franchise today, I'm not just going to give you 3 steers that are all the same age. We're sophisticated enough that I will give you a steer that is going to be ready to harvest in 6 to 9 months, another one that's ready to harvest in 12 to 15 months, and another one that's ready to harvest in 21 to 24 months. That gives you a spread. That means that you will have meat available to you for a long time until your bred animals have offspring that you own and can get into the production mix. You've got a breeding pig. Pigs are fascinating. Mother Nature and God work together, and pigs, once a mama pig or a sow is bred, they farrow or have their piglets in 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. Like clockwork, it's wild. The other cool thing about pigs, not only do they have a very short gestation period, but they have multiple births, typically between 4 and 12 piglets per litter. And finally, pigs are good because they come to market weight in 6 to 8 months. We have a whole mess of baby pigs out at Little G Ranch right now. It's almost springtime, right? So that's when all the babies and the flowers come out. Those pigs 6 to 8 months from now will be moving down to Florida for breeding stock or go into the meat locker so that we can put food on your table. You'll notice I don't offer any market hogs in this particular one, and that's just simply because, again, pigs reproduce fairly quickly. And so you don't need any in there by the time they get going. Same with sheep. Sheep have a slightly longer gestation period, 5.5, 6 months. And they have anywhere from 1 to 3 babies, usually 1 or 2, 3 happens, but are rare. And as we introduce lamb into our program this year in 2026, you're going to find that is going to be, for those of you that love lamb, that's great. If you don't love lamb, no problem. You should probably still have it in your franchise because, again, it's going to be a moneymaker. And then chickens. Chickens are super interesting, and here's why. There is no breeding program for chickens with us. And the reason is, take laying hens, for example. If we were to incubate all of our eggs, let's say we took 1,000 eggs because we needed to get new chickens on board, and we were to incubate those eggs and set up a whole system by which we produce baby chicks, what's the obvious result? Half of them are going to be roosters. That does nothing for me in the egg laying business. So rather than do that, what we do is we use a hatchery that we're familiar with, that we've used for years through Justin and Stephanie Vincent at Vincent Farms, now part of Axe and Wanted Raw Foods. We acquired them this year. But the reason we can do that is because the last thing a bird does before it hatches or pecks through that shell and comes out of its shell is it eats the yolk. That yolk gives it 3 days of food and water. That means that a hatchery can hatch out a whole mess of chicks, box them up, and ship them U.S. Postal Service to us in Grapeland, Texas. And as long as they arrive within 3 days, which we usually get them the day after or 2 days later, they arrive just fine. We have a very, very low mortality rate. We might lose 1 or 2 chicks when we buy 500. But because of that yolk and the food and water, they ship just fine. That means that we can order chickens that the experts have already sexed. We know when we're going to get laying hens. If we order 500 laying hens to raise up, we know those laying hens are going to be 99% female that'll produce eggs. With our meat birds, same thing. but we don't really care if they're male or female in the meat bird thing. I just don't want to build an incubating hatchery. There's very specific crosses that grow the way that we want them, and those have already been long established, and there's no point in reinventing the wheel if we don't have to. So all of our birds come from a hatchery. What does that mean to you? Since we don't have a breeding program for poultry, your birds that you buy in your Ranchise are evergreen. That means that if you have 60 meat chickens, or broilers as we call them, in your Ranchise, every 6 to 9 months, you are going to get access to birds that we have harvested to fill your family freezer, and we will automatically replace those. Same thing with your laying hens. Laying hens have a 3.5 to 4 year productive life. I know some of you have backyard chickens that are 8, 9 years old still laying eggs. No doubt that that happens. But from a production standpoint, I don't keep anything on our ranches that is not productive. And for eggs, for laying hens, that means I need them laying about 340 eggs a year. And they go through molt. That's what we're seeing right now at our ranch in Texas. It means that egg production is way, way down. That is a time for the hens to rest. Really interesting, how do the commercial operations get eggs year round without having to deal with molt? They artificially light their laying barns, those big, huge barns you see out in the fields that house 10,000, 20,000 chickens. Those have lights that stay on as long as the longest day of the year so that hens never molt. It means they get exhausted. It means they're not healthy. It means it's bad for the animal, and we would never do that. So when the days are short in November, December, January, and now February, those hens go into a rest cycle we call molting. And that's what we're in right now. We're just coming out of it and starting to see our girls pick up their production right about the time we want them to be. So again, these chickens are evergreen. When those hens age out at 3.5 to 4 years and we process them into stew birds because nothing gets wasted on our operation, we will simply replace those for you. You never have to buy more birds. All right, so this is what a 1.0 Ranchise looks like. Let me show you what a quarter might look like. So this is a good example of a quarter Ranchise. You don't have the dairy cow. Dairy cows are expensive. They create a ton of revenue for us, and they're expensive. So if you're starting with a quarter, no shame. I'm not faulting anybody for starting with a quarter. But the issue is we've got less dollars to work with. And so there's only so much we can do with that. So we try to give you as big a spread as possible. So you've got your mama beef cow, you've got your mama pig, and you've got chickens in both categories here. Now, what do you do to bridge the gap, right? By contract, when you see your RHL and wanted contract with us, it's going to say if you own land with us, we have 6 months to fulfill your animals. If you don't own land with us, then we have 12 months to fill them. So you've got that gap to start with, and then your animals have to be productive. If you're assigned a 1-year-old beef cow, mama cow, we won't breed her until she's 2 years old. We don't breed cattle until they're about 2 years old, 18 to 24 months. That's just because that's what's best for the cow. Then she has a 9-month gestation period, and then that animal takes 18 to 24 months to come to market weight, because when you raise animals on pasture out in the fresh air and sunshine, they don't grow as fast as if you put them in a feedlot and feed them crap food that is meant to artificially fatten them much, much faster. So it's going to take a little time for your Ranchise to be productive from a beef standpoint. From a pig standpoint, we just went through what the gestation period is and how fast that'll happen. That'll happen within 12 months or so. Same with sheep. Your chickens you're going to have access to as soon as we populate them, because meat birds take about 10 to 12 weeks to go from day-old chick into my freezer, and then you'll have access to those. And your laying hens will be productive right away because we buy hens that are ready to go, or we already have those hens in-house. So what do we do in the meantime? We offer you a steep discount, 25% off anything from Wanted Raw Foods. We have subscriptions there that can save you a ton of money. We have curated boxes that'll save you a ton of money, and all of those come with the 25% discount. That's what you can use to feed your family throughout the time period before your Ranchise is productive. In fact, anybody that wants to buy a Ranchise this week, you get your money into me by Friday, we're going to give you a 1-year subscription to one of our Wanted Raw Foods curated boxes. These are brand new boxes. They are a super good value. We select what meat goes into each box. It's how we make sure that our freezer stays rotated properly. You don't have to sweat. You're not getting a bunch of organ meat or a bunch of bones. You're not getting any of that. These are all regular, usable cuts. Some of you are going to be familiar with. Some you may not be familiar with, and that's kind of the exciting part of this deal, right? You get to learn new cuts. You can obviously Google how to cook them. We are madly trying to add recipes and videos to our website on how to cook some of these cuts that you may never have heard of, like a bavette, or like a flap steak, or like short ribs Korean style that you may have never seen. You may have seen them in a restaurant, but you've never cooked them yourself. I get questions all the time. I'd love to eat lamb more often, but I don't know how to cook it. We're going to show you how to do that when we add lamb into the mix. Okay, so that's our promotion for today. Is if you sign up and get your cash in by this Friday, you're going to get a 12-month subscription to one of our curated boxes. Hope that helps. Okay, this is the calculator. What will happen is when we've completed this course, there's going to be an interest form that Haley puts in the chat for you. You fill that form out, very basic information. Haley will walk you through, make sure you understand everything clearly, and then she can set up a meeting with you and I on Zoom where we will talk about your specific needs, your family, how your family eats, what kind of revenue you're looking to generate, and that sort of thing. And then we can build a franchise specifically for you. All right? That is the Ranchise animal calculator. Let me stop sharing the screen here. Okay, so we talked about this already, but I wanted to go over it one more time here. This is the cost of the franchises if you own a parcel with us, and if you don't own a parcel with us. And if you own land with us, it starts at $25,000. If you don't own land with us, it starts at $37,500. One other offer that I want to make sure you're aware of is if you put in $37,500 today, and then 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the road, you end up buying a parcel with Axe, we will refund the difference as a land credit when you buy the parcel with us. That means that if 6 months from now you decide, hey, you know what, I'm stoked about Tennessee, I want to get a little piece of Tennessee, so I'm going to buy a parcel there, I will take $12,500 off the cost of that land. All right? Next piece to that is I promised you that we would talk about financing. We have very few people that have opted to do this. And so this is an offer we want to make because if it helps one person, I think it's worth doing. We want you with our family. We want you to be part of what we're doing here because we think it's important. Not because we're desperate for your money or because we want to sell 1 million of these franchises. I have very limited number of franchises that I can sell because right now we have a finite amount of land. So this is not something that exists that is just going to be infinite until we get our next ranch. But if you would prefer to finance this to get started, these are based on a quarter. You can multiply this out any way you want. If you wanted to finance a whole franchise, you certainly could. You would just multiply these numbers by 4. But typically people that are going to finance this don't own land with us. No problem. So we're going to use that as an example. $37,500, we already went over the cost of it. The cost with financing is going to be $42,500. So you're going to pay $5,000 in interest in order to finance with us. You're going to make a $5,000 down payment, and you're going to have a monthly payment of $2,000. That'll be paid off in 12 to 24 months. The reason for the variance in the months is because the revenue check that you're going to earn, and we are going to talk about ROI and how you generate revenue from this in a minute. But the revenue, we will hold on to the revenue. The reason that we can justify financing a franchise is because we hold all the cards. We hold all the revenue that comes from the franchise. We control the animals. So if somebody were to default on a franchise payment, we don't really risk anything. We keep whatever money you've put into it, and we have your animals, and we'll distribute those elsewhere. So we have very little risk in it. But what we also do is your balance will go down with your quarterly payments. So instead of taking cash for your quarterly payments, it's simply going to reduce the balance that you owe to us for financing it. We have 2 other options here. Everything is about the same. The difference is going to be we charge an extra $3,000 if you want a $1,000 a month payment, and we charge an extra, what is that, $14,000 if you want to stretch it out to 6 years or so with a $500 a month down payment. No prepayment penalties. You run into some cash, you get a big bonus from your work, and you want to pay it off. There are no prepayment penalties or anything like that. You just pay in. If you were to select the $500 a month payment and you paid it off in 3-4 years, I would just make an adjustment there for you on the rate that you paid to finance it. I'm not doing this to make money in terms of interest payments or anything like that. That's not what we're all about. We try to be really fair when it comes down to that sort of thing. So that's what we're doing. Passive generational income, the investment that works for you and your future. Okay, so hold on. Let's talk about ROI. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again. This is for example purposes only. Okay, so these are just numbers that I have buried in my brain. We've been using them for a long time. It helps me from getting confused in my old age. So the first assumption we're going to make at the start of every quarter, so April 1st, we are going to go through and we are going to count up the total number of franchises that we have in our entire ecosystem. Doesn't matter whether they're in Texas, Florida, Tennessee, years down the road, they could be spread out all across the country. Whatever the total number is on the beginning of the quarter, that's the number we're going to use. So in this example, we've got 52 franchises on January 1st of this year. Okay. Hypothetically speaking, let's say over the first quarter, when we get to March 31st, Wanted Raw Foods generated $150,000 of profit. Okay. I want to make sure this is really clear for you. The revenue that is generated by your franchise has nothing to do with the production of your personal animals. It's very unlikely that this scenario would ever happen, but you could take every single scrap of meat that came from your franchise and it really would not move the needle in terms of revenue. So the first goal, not only for you, but for us, is to create food security. That is the reason that we are doing this. We are a for-profit business. I'm not trying to blow smoke here and tell you that it's all altruistic. This is a business meant to generate revenue to pay our staff and to pay our people. But that is not the driving force. The driving force here is to create food security for you and your family and us and our families, because this is how we live also. So we are going to, let's say that we generated $150,000 in profit, and then we're going to take out some expenses. The expenses for a franchise owner are very specific. There's 5 things. You're going to kick down about 1/6 of the profit goes to our ranch hands. They're the ones doing all the hard work every day to make your franchise successful. So think of this as their bonus or tip from you. Then you've got shipping and packaging, you've got marketing, and you've got processing. Those are the expenses that are going to come out of your franchise pay. Those generally run about 1/3 of our profit. So if we ran $150,000 of profit, took out $50,000 of expenses, that's going to create a net profit of $100,000. And then we're going to split that. Contractually, that gets split between our franchise owners and Wanted Raw Foods. And so Wanted Raw Foods is going to take $50,000 for their profit. The franchise pool then has $50,000 into it. This is where your revenue comes from. All we do at this point is we divide the franchise pool by the total number of franchises, and a 1.0 or a full franchise is going to generate $961.54 in this case. If you had a 1.43 franchise, right, because you had some animals born into your franchise, and so your franchise grew a little bit, it would be $13.75. So how do we determine ROI? This is where it gets really interesting. I have said from the beginning, this is not a high ROI investment. This is not meant to be a quick get rich quick scheme or anything like that. So the first thing I want you to do when you start looking at what the ROI that this is going to generate is think about your family's food budget as it exists right now. And this is not my family, my wife and I do not do this, so please don't feel bad if you don't either. But if you are so sophisticated that you save all your grocery receipts, go back over the last couple months and figure out what you spent on meat and eggs over the last couple of months. If you have a family of 4, and that's a small family in our ecosphere, but let's say you had a family of 4, I am going to guess that you probably spend about $650, particularly if you've got teenagers in your house. You're probably going to spend about $650 a month in meat and eggs. Okay? So assume that for $150 with your franchise discount, that $150 will cover all that meat and eggs for your family for the month. Okay, you buy from Wanted Raw Foods, you use your franchise discount, you get top quality, well-raised food for your family. You're going to pay out $150 for that with your discount. That leaves you a savings every month of $500. Take that out over 12 months, and what do you get? You get this $6,000 right here. That's the first piece of your ROI. You don't have to pay that cash out that you're paying now to the grocery stores or the Costco's or whatever. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this $961.54 and we're going to, in this example that I'm using here, if you annualize the franchise share, So you've got $5,500. If you take this times 4, you get $5,500. That's what you would earn annually with your quarterly payments. You take those two numbers together and you're at a 31% ROI. That's a pretty good return. I don't care who you are or what you're investing in, that's pretty good. Now, let's change that up a little bit. Let's say that you had a quarter franchise and you're just getting 0.25. Okay? Let's say you had a quarter franchise and you got $300 for the quarter, which means that you've got a $1,200. I'm going to make this $1,200 here just for simplicity's sake. You've got a $1,200 annual return from your franchise payouts. Not much money. You're not going to change the world with $300 or $100 a month in franchise payments. But when you add these two numbers together and get $7,200, you will see up here, if you look at this formula, that if you take $7,200 and divide it by the 37.5 that you put into this to buy your quarter share, that's a 19% return. That's real money. I mean, the stock market's great, I guess, if you want to invest in that, but it's all ethereal. You're not touching anything there. This is a way that you can not only get all the feels from food security for generations to come, but the other thing you've got to pay attention to is this number here, that $300, that assumes no growth by us. That assumes that I'm terrible at my job and Wanted Raw Foods is not growing. So I want you to, when you look at the ROI on this, realize that I feel like we're providing a very fair return on your investment, plus all the altruistic things of the food security and whatnot. And I haven't even talked about the growth potential. We haven't even introduced raw dairy yet. We have not introduced lamb yet. We've only got 2 ranches going so far. Our shipping costs are through the roof right now. The more ranches we add, the more of those distribution nodes that I talked about earlier that we have, the more efficient we are going to be, the lower expenses, the better we're going to do for revenue. This is just the tip of the iceberg right now, and I couldn't be more excited to see how we grow it over the next 10 years. All right, that is your ROI. So now that we've explained that, let me stop sharing again and get back to this screen. Okay. How your franchise runs, 100% hands off. Again, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to know the difference between a cow and a pig. You own the animals. We talked about that. These are real assets. We design your mix. I work with you directly. You're not, actually, you may meet with Haley. Haley is getting so good at what she does. She's my executive assistant, and that is not a fair title for her. If any of you ever watched the TV show Suits, she's Donna. That's how efficient Haley is. And I bring that up because very soon she's going to start doing these franchise calls on her own. She's sat through 1 million of them with me. She knows it as well as I do. I'm fun to talk to because I'm the old guy with gray hair and I've been doing this a while. She's way prettier than I am. She's a lot of fun to talk to. She will take excellent care of you if you have your franchise class with Haley, or your franchise meeting with Haley. Pro ranch hands run everything: daily care, feed, breeding, rotational mob grazing, processing, logistics, fencing, watering, overall well-being. Everything having to do with franchise, we take care of. Now, if you live on the land, if you own a parcel with us and you want to participate, we offer that. We will have participation days. We will have days when we're gathering the cattle and we need extra hands to help move cattle around, or to help run gates, or to record things for us while we're moving cattle around. But keep in mind, this is a full-time working ranch. We do not do this as a lark. This is not a dude ranch where you get on a 25-year-old mare that doesn't move very fast and you plod along. Things move quickly. There's a lot of dangerous things that go on, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can really get hurt. We get hurt, and we know what we're doing. I have to be careful. I'm getting of an age now where I can't fall off a horse too many more times without breaking a hip. So I get to do it when I want to do it, but the hands are out there every day doing this stuff for us. Smart breeding equals growth. People ask this all the time, what breeds do we have, and why do we use different breed mixes? It's kind of an interesting discussion. When TJ and Kara started this company and the original Ranchise concept, they went out and bought a mess of Wagyu cattle, 100% Wagyu cattle. They went out and bought a bunch of Iberico pigs. Basically, that's how TJ's mind works, right? He wants the best of the best of the best of everything. The reality, though, is that's not smart ranching practices. And they had no way of knowing that because they're not ranchers. So they bring in folks like Justin and I, and we got things sorted out for them. And the reason I bring that up is because the breed mix that we have in Texas won't necessarily thrive in Florida. The breed mix that we have in Florida won't necessarily thrive in Montana. Different climates, different topography, different humidity. All these things go into the breed mixes that we use or the breed crosses that we use in different locations. I also get people that say, hey, I really like the steak out of Texas. Can I always get that instead of one out of Florida? No, my goal as the guy that runs Wanted Raw Foods with Kevin Charnota is once we get multiple ranches really up and running, you should not be able to tell the difference between a steak that was raised on the ranch in Texas versus a steak that was raised on the ranch in Florida versus a steak that was raised on a ranch in Montana. We do that by changing up the breed crosses that we use in our breeding cattle so that we get a very similar ribeye from each location. Again, this comes to decentralization. I don't want people being able to select what ranch their meat came off of because then I've got to ship to wherever you are from that ranch. If I've got consistency and homogeny in my meat across the country, you don't care where I ship it and you don't care where I raised it at. You just know that you love the Wanted Raw Foods ribeye and you want to order it. It's the same every time. That's my goal. Okay. Birds are evergreen. We talked about this. Layers are productive for about 3.5 to 4 years, then replaced automatically at no additional cost to you. Same for the broilers, our meat birds. They will be replaced automatically as you go through them. The right genetics in the right place. Breed mixes are tailored by state and ranch. We don't truck animals across states. Another interesting point. If you do not own land with us, or if you own land, you're going to be buying a piece of Tennessee that we're about to close on, and you buy your Ranchise today, it will start in Texas. It'll be housed in Texas. When you move to that ranch and you're living on that ranch and you want your Ranchise moved there, I will happily do that. But I'm not going to truck those animals from Texas to Tennessee because they're not the right mix for that land. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Ranchise for you with the same age groups. No loss to you to do this, right? You're going to have the same age cow in Tennessee that you had in Texas. It'll just be a different breed mix that thrives in Tennessee. Owner controls consumption. When an animal is processed, you will get a notice on your Ranchise Command Center. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. You will get a notice that says, hey, Sue, we just processed your steer number 2507. Here is a grid that'll show you the different cuts that you have access to on the 4 quarters. A cow is naturally broken into 4 quarters. And you can choose which quarters you want. You can take the whole dang cow if you want to, or you can say, I want quarter A and D or B and D, whatever mix you want that you want to put in your freezer to feed your family for the foreseeable future. And we do that so that you get a variety of cuts available to you. We do not want to get into the business of custom cutting your animals. Fair, and again, I told you I was super transparent. The meat that you receive when we process one of your animals is not going to be specifically from your animal. We have a first in, first out policy in our freezer. So I'm going to create the same amount of meat that your animal produced through those quarters and ship that to you. All right? Very good. Now, I promised you the command center. Let me share that with you. Okay, this is our Ranchise Command Center. And you can see here, Little G Ranch dashboard. This is the overview. This is a fake account that we set up. All your contact information is going to be here. If you own land with us, it's going to have your parcel number. If you don't own land with us, it's going to have your Ranchise number on it. It will tell us just by first glance what the fulfillment date is, meaning when do we have to provide those animals. Over here, you're going to see a map of the ranch that you can expand. And you can see eventually, this is way down the road, but eventually you will be able to see the grazing patterns on these ranches and be able to see where the animals are at any given time. If you have a parcel with us, you're going to see your parcel here. This is just some basic information. This is how many total animals we have in our Ranchise system at any given time, etc. Over here, you're going to see all your documents. These are the contracts you're going to sign, a welcome packet so that it's easy for you to reference all these documents. The welcome packet's going to tell you how to access Wanted Raw Foods and your discount. Here's how you contact us if you need support or have a question. And then we get into your specifics. So you can choose to look up your animals any way you want. If you know your tag numbers, you can look them up here. Here you see your poultry. We don't take pictures of the poultry. We just tell you how many you have. I have no idea why Sam still has a turkey in here for the dairy cow. Again, this is just a sample account, but this would be your dairy cows. And the cool thing is, if you click to view details, you are going to see a side view of your animal and a face view. Why is the face view important? A cow is going to have 2 tags in it. A sheep is going to have 2 tags in it. And what that means is one tag is going to tell you this is your ranchise number or your parcel number, and this is going to have your name on it. The other one is the ranch, where it's going to have little g and then whatever our ranch number for that animal is, so that they're easily identifiable. But importantly to you, you can go out to the ranch and you can hunt around through our herd and find your specific cow, because they exist. This is not a herd share. You own these animals outright. So that's the pictures there. And you can see that we have all the various categories in here. Pigs do not get tagged. And the reason is because it is dang near impossible to keep an ear tag in a pig, because they chew on everything and they just chew them off. Typically we use notching for our pigs to identify them. That's really hard to show their ears being notched on the camera. So you're gonna have to have a little faith in us that we're doing the right thing. I think we're transparent enough on everything else that you probably figured out that we're not out to mess with you just on your swine. And then you've got your sheep and everything following suit down here. And here's some FAQs. I don't see photos of my animals yet. Yes, this is a work in progress. We just launched the command center about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And as we bring in the herds, we're not just going to bring them in to take pictures of them. The next time we gather our cattle at Little G, we'll be photographing them and getting those pictures uploaded on here. You will see a notification setup on here that we'll be adding in on the next iteration. That's where you will find out whenever you have offspring being born. So you got a baby calf, a baby sheep, baby pigs. We'll notify you of how many and what kind you had, and we may want to have a conversation with you if you want to add those females to your breeding stock. It's also where you'll be notified if any of your animals are processed, giving you access to that meat. All right, that is the Ranchise Command Center. ROI breakdown, we already went through this, so I'm not going to go through it again. Family food first, profits next, the 50-50 split. So first of all, everything we do is pretty much direct to consumer. Now, there's a big caveat with that. I mentioned very briefly early on that we just acquired Vincent Farms. Vincent Farms has been running for 7 or 8 years, owned by Justin and Stephanie Vincent. Justin is our director of ranching, and his wife Stephanie runs their place, Vincent Farms. Wanted Raw Foods just acquired Vincent Farms at the beginning of February. What does that mean? It means if you're in East Texas, you are going to now have access to be able to pick up your meat. Stephanie has drop locations, about 10 of them, all across East Texas, all the way down to the Bay Area, through Houston, up in Montgomery in the Woodlands, and working our way north. It means that we're going to be establishing a home delivery system in East Texas. Again, remember I talked about how we buy these ranches in specific locations so that we can distribute to the major metropolitan areas. We're going to start with the Houston area, but soon enough we'll be up in the Dallas area and then out in the Austin area. But we are direct to consumer no matter how you slice it. Simple claiming, choose beef quarters, poultry, pork, lamb, eggs via your command center. We just talked through that. Egg access. As a franchise owner, you have access up to a case of eggs, which is 4 dozen eggs a month at cost, which is $20. The $20 basically just covers the shipping and packaging for your eggs. As I mentioned before, we're in a slow period for eggs right now. Our hens are just coming out of their molting period or their resting period. We're getting into spring. We've got 500 new hens that are coming online and will be producing eggs for us in late April, early May. So eggs will come back online very quickly here over the next 60 days. The remainder is all revenue. Anything that you do not consume as a franchise owner for your family, that goes into the Wanted Raw Food system. That generates the revenue that pays you your quarterly payment checks. We already talked about the quarterly payment, so I'm not going to go through that again. If you have questions about it, this is going to be an on-demand Ranchise Masterclass. That I told you that at the beginning. You can go back and look at this anytime you want to refresh. And then when we have a meeting where you're ready to buy your Ranchise, I can answer any final questions you have at that time. Behind the scenes, franchise operations and families. This job's a lot of fun. We've got our, this time last year, on March 3rd, I think, of 2025, we launched Wanted Raw Foods. We actually started selling in January, kind of a soft opening, got some SOPs in line, started to figure things out, and we had a big old bash at Little G Ranch in Texas where we invited a ton of fans and our entire team in, and we had a big bash to celebrate the launch of Wanted Raw Foods. Next week, TJ Kara, myself, and Evie, our leadership team, are bringing in the entire company, and we're going to do some training, a lot of fun activities, have a little retreat, a good way to kick off the year now that the weather's turning pretty good. But this was from the Wanted launch. We do all kinds of fun things. We sample raw dairy at different events. All this is going to be part of your world as you become franchise owners and hopefully Axe owners down the road. I'm going to go through this one more time. I'm going to do it pretty quickly, but I told you at the beginning, these are big things that we get people on meetings and they want to ask these questions. So I try to make it super clear in these presentations. Not a get rich quick scheme. This is not something you're going to flip. This is not something that's going to provide an enormous ROI for you. I got to assume you're pretty happy with the ROI that I showed you earlier. Are there going to be quarters when those numbers are down? Sure. But again, if you get nothing other than the food savings, it's a pretty great return. It is not a stock or real estate flip. You're not going to buy this today and sell it 5 years from now at a profit. That's just not how this program is built. If you needed to get out, we have ways that we can help you do that, but ultimately you've got to find somebody that wants to buy this from you. Now, if you had to get out for personal reasons or whatever, and you needed to help with that, and I had somebody waiting to buy a franchise, we could do it that way as well, but that is not the intent of this program. This is not a small backyard homestead or a shared communal operation. These are large working ranches with real hands, with real cowboys that are doing all the work. This is not a herd share. This is not something that you need to come participate in, put in X number of hours a month on it. None of that. We handle all the labor for you. This is not a concept or a prototype. This is happening in real time. This is something we've been doing for over a year now. We have people that have owned their franchises for 2.5, 3 years. Those ranches that are now actually in production. And we are not land consults. I cannot say this enough times. I love the fact that you've got 40 acres in Illinois. I cannot franchise on your 40 acres. I am not going to work with you to teach you how to do what we do because it's a product we're selling. It would be counterproductive. Down the road, when we have ranches in every state or the majority of states, might we create coursework on this so that people could learn to do it our way? Absolutely. But for right now, we are not consultants. We're not going to help you do this. If you want to do this, it has to be done on our land under our guidance. All right. Let's get started. There's a couple ways that you can get started. The first one is franchise only. You do not need to own any land with us. You can buy as low as a quarter franchise for $25,000 if you own land with us, or $37,500 if you don't. And we can get this process started immediately. As I said before, we do have a promotion going this week. If you get your cash in by Friday, we're going to gift you a 1-year subscription to one of our curated boxes. That's boxes where we select the cuts, but you get an amazing supply of the best possibly raised meat in the world. This gives you true food security, passive income, financing is available. It's perfect for individuals and families who want ownership, but you're still stuck in suburbia. You've got an amazing job. You've got to live in downtown Chicago to do your job because you're trading futures or securities. You live in Manhattan and you're working on Wall Street, or you're a real estate mogul in Manhattan, but you want to give your family this kind of food security. We can help with that and at least get you started to get out of that rat race. The other thing you can do, whoops, sorry, went too fast. The other thing you can do is you can look at our land options, meaning that if you want to purchase a parcel at one of the ranches we already have, you can buy a parcel in Florida, you can buy a parcel in Tennessee. In fact, I leave on Thursday and we've got a property tour in Tennessee this weekend at Creo Ranch there that we're planning on closing escrow on late this month, or middle of March, I should say. And if you want to come see that property, meet a bunch of our team members, learn more about how we do things and who we are, I cannot recommend a property tour high enough. In fact, if you are in Texas, we do quarterly tours at Little G Ranch. Little G Ranch is completely sold out. We don't have land available there, but we still do quarterly tours so that you can come and see the operation. You can come and meet us in person, learn to trust us, learn that we know what we're doing, see how we treat the animals, and get that comfort that we want you to have before you do anything with us. Another way that you can do that, I've got a ton of families that I work with that want ranches in other states. Probably if I had to guess, and since I'm in charge of going out and looking at new ranch land, I spent a ton of time in the fourth quarter in the Montana, Idaho, Wyoming area. I would say that's probably coming online very soon. California is coming soon. Georgia's coming soon. And the Carolinas are coming soon. If you wanted to be in some of those locations, we have a program. It's called the Angels 2.0 program. And what it does is it allows you to put cash in today that earns interest in the form of land credits. So hypothetically, you put $100,000 into Georgia today and the Angels 2.0 program, you're going to get some steep advantages. You're going to be one of the first people to be able to pick their parcels when we establish a ranch in Georgia. You're going to get a 1.5% monthly credit of land for your land purchase. We hold that money for a minimum of 2 years. So you've got a 4-month waiting period and then 24 months that we get to use that for operations, for infrastructure. And at the end of that, hopefully by then we have Georgia ready to go. And so rough numbers, we have a 10% signing bonus if you put in at least $50,000. And if all that maths out, at the end of a couple of years, you would have $150,000 of your $100,000 investment to use towards the purchase of your land. It's a pretty good deal and allows us to continue to build infrastructure and get ready to purchase that land. If you're interested in any of those programs, all you need to do is let Haley know on the interest form that she's going to put in the chat for you. She's probably put it in a couple times already. Fill out that form, and when we have a meeting, I can talk you through all these programs. So don't feel stressed out if I didn't explain it clearly enough or if you still got questions. We can talk about all that when we get online together with our Zoom meeting. And there's Haley, there's me. We are your two primary contacts for any of these programs. Haley, like I said, has put the interest form in there. That will get you through to me. We can set up a Zoom meeting and we can talk through all this stuff if I haven't answered all your questions. The last thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to do a little Q&A. And so I'm going to invite Haley back in here to let me know what questions people have popped up, and I will go ahead and answer those for you.
Do we vaccinate our cows?
Oh, great question. Yes. And we vaccinate them when they're calves. They do not get ongoing vaccinations. As ranchers, my primary concern is always going to be the animal's welfare first. To give you an example, Texas is what's known as a brucellosis-free state. Brucellosis is a disease where if you have one cow that gets brucellosis in your herd, the government is going to tell you you have to kill off your entire herd. You've got to start from absolute scratch. And the reason is because if that disease got into the national herd, it would wipe out the entire beef population in this country. You've probably seen a ton of stuff on the news over the last several months about how small the herd of cattle is in this country right now, how the American rancher is aging out. Average age of the American rancher right now is 65 years old. All that is to say that yes, we vaccinate our calves. What I can tell you is, again, it takes 18 to 24 months from a calf to get from born to market weight. That vaccination, we use the bare minimum that we're required to by law, and that vaccine is well out of their system long before they ever get into meat production. And that has been tested. That's not just something I'm making up. If you test meat that we process, you will never be able to, scientifically, you're never going to find vaccines in that meat because it's so far removed from when that meat is produced. To give you a little bit of comfort, when you give an animal antibiotics, the description on the bottle will tell you that it takes 6 weeks for those antibiotics to get out of their system. You're never going to get an animal that had antibiotics. If we have an animal that gets sick and we have to give it antibiotics, we're going to talk to whoever owns that animal in our ranchise system, or if it's a RHL-owned animal, we will simply take it to the sale barn or we'll eat it ourselves. We won't keep that in our food system because we don't use antibiotics in our food chain. But vaccines we do use when the animals are young because otherwise the majority of our calves would never make it. Next question.
So what happens if, like you just said, if our animals don't make it? What happens if they don't make it? Is there some kind of an insurance we should carry? How does that work?
Sure. So as I identified during the class, these are animals that you own. You own very specific animals that are tagged just for you. If an animal that you own dies, it is up to you to replace it or not. Now, there's a couple things that you should know. One is, we've been doing this with Axe for 3 years, and we have never had a franchisee's animal die. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I can promise you at some point it will happen. It's just not a very often occurrence, and we haven't seen it happen so far. There is livestock insurance that you can purchase. I think it costs like $50 to $100 a year for a cow. And then obviously that would decrease for the smaller animals. We have been working, and it's not a high priority thing for us, but we are working on putting together kind of a group insurance deal for livestock insurance. We're just trying to find the right system to do that. But you can immediately go out upon buying your franchise. You can look up livestock insurance and find a company that will insure your animals for you. My recommendation is always insure your breeding stock. Don't worry about your market stock. Certainly do not insure your poultry. If you lose poultry, it's not relatively expensive to repopulate them. But yes, there is livestock insurance, but at the end of the day, it should be very clear, these are your animals. You're investing in a passive income business. Just like any other business, if your business gets damaged, if your assets gets damaged, it's up to you to either have insurance or to replace those assets. This falls under the same category. We're here to help and support you all along the way, but again, you do own these assets and they are your responsibility. I should also say too, if there was ever a situation where it was something that we did that caused the problem, for instance, a fence is broken, the cow gets out and gets hit on the highway, we're going to replace that animal. We're not in this to screw anybody over or any of that. I hope you've gotten that impression from me today. But if it's our negligence, we would take care of that. But generally speaking, it would be up to you. What else you got?
Do we have an organic designation?
No, and nor will we. And I'll explain why. This is a very sensitive topic with me, as you probably heard in the tone of my voice. Organic designations, particularly when it comes to livestock, are a joke. I'll give you a very specific example. I've been in California my whole life until the last year. We have a company up there in Northern California called Petaluma Poultry. They're now owned by Purdue, which is one of the largest ag conglomerates in the world. They have certified chicken, certified broilers, certified organic, right? Listed by the government as CCOF approved for organic certification. They buy all their feed from China. All the feed that they feed their poultry comes from China, which has far lower organic standards than we have in the US. That means that they are saving all kinds of money. I can't go out and buy feed from China. They can because they're big enough. They bring it over in cargo ships. I'm a little guy. I can't do that. I don't care about organic designation. I want to know where our feed came from, who grew it, that it was done properly, that it's known source, no spray, no corn, no soy, all the things. As long as you trust me to be a good steward of your animals, you don't care about organic certification only. It is a waste of money for small farms to get that designation because it creates an unfair competitive advantage for a small farm and it's relatively meaningless. If the CCOF that handles those designations were serious about it and went and did inspections of these big conglomerate farms and forced them into the same standards that we live by, then I'd consider it. But at this point, it's a wasted expense. It's way too much reporting and fairly meaningless in my opinion. What you really want to know is, can you visit the farm that your animals are raised on? And what are their practices? Where did their feed come from? Are they going to show you the label on their feed? We do all those things. What else you got?
What kind of dairy cattle do we use, and what kind of milk do they, what type of milk do they produce?
Sure. We use almost exclusively A2 Jersey dairy cows, widely known as the Cadillac of dairy cows. They have a high butterfat content, which is going to be really amazing when we once we get our dairy operations up and running. Shortly thereafter, we will start building out a value-added processing facility, meaning that we can make cheeses, we can make sour cream, we can make yogurts, we can make chocolate milk, all that stuff. The first value-added product that we're actually going to have is going to be ice cream. And the reason for that is in the event that we ever had milk left over in a given week that we didn't have a buyer for, it gives us a way to process that milk into something that has a long shelf life. Noticeably ice cream, right? You put it into containers, you throw it in the freezer, it'll last 6 months to a year. So we will actually have ice cream available pretty readily. The rest, I would assume, is 1 to 2 years away. But we use A2 Jersey cows across the board for our dairy operations. What's next?
What about sheep and goat milk? Are those kind of in the chute?
They will come down the road. Cow milk will be our first thing, but as we build out our first dairy parlor in Texas, it will be configured so that we can also milk sheep and goats there at some time. I think that's probably a couple years down the road before we see that, because I really want to get the cows up and running. That is a very popular raw dairy, and we know that we can sell out of that milk every week pretty consistently. Down the road, as we build up more ranches, the other thing you got to pay attention to is sheep and goats, for instance. We have them at Little G, but they don't thrive in the heat and humidity during the summertime. And with all 3 of our ranches being in the southeast right now, I'm waiting for that California ranch. I'm waiting for that ranch up in Idaho or Utah where we can raise sheep that will thrive better than they do in the southeast. So that is TBD. It's definitely coming. I grew up on a 1,500 acre sheep ranch. They're near and dear to my heart. I love eating lamb. We even are working with a guy as we grow the sheep operation, a company out of New Zealand that takes the wool and processes it into insulation for your walls. So I try not to waste anything when I'm in production. And so we're constantly looking for ways to do that, and sheep will be a big part of that.
When it comes to our chickens, do we bleach those? Do we vaccinate them? How do we care for our chickens?
Cool, great question. First of all, no. So what they're talking about in this is the chlorine water bath that the big commercial operations use when the chicken is processed. So the chicken gets slaughtered, it gets eviscerated, plucked, all that stuff. You end up with the carcass that you're familiar with, and then they put those in a chlorine bath to get rid of any pathogens on that bird. We don't do that. All of our birds are air chilled, meaning that instead of putting them in a chlorine bath, they get put on a rack where they can air dry in a controlled environment, but there are no chemicals used for that. So no, you won't see any of that. We do not give our chickens any growth hormones. Well, first of all, let me tell you this. If you ever see chicken advertised in the store that says no antibiotics nor hormones, first of all, that's BS. It's illegal to give chickens hormones to begin with. So anybody that advertises that is just trying to make noise. Nobody in the country is allowed to give their chickens hormones and sell them. It's just not a thing. We don't vaccinate our chickens. We don't do any of that stuff. We just do a really good job of putting them in a situation in our brood houses where it's a very clean environment. It's a very natural environment. By clean does not mean sterile, right? If you let your kids grow up like I did, where at 4 years old, I'm out playing in the mud and the muck, and I'm chucking cow pies at my friends, handling manure and all that stuff, that builds up antibodies. That makes you tough as nails. That gives you a cast iron gut. To this date, I can eat dang near anything except for coconut and bananas. Definitely allergic to those. But I can eat pretty much anything and not get sick because that's the way I was raised. People my generation, we have a running joke about being raised on hose water and neglect. I see moms all the time now that tell their kids, oh, you can't drink out of the hose water. I don't get that. Raise your kids to get sick early on. That builds up antibodies that they will use for the rest of their lives. We do the same thing with our livestock. Our chickens, our baby chicks, the day olds, they're put in an environment. It's not sterile, but it's super clean. We change the bedding often. We make sure that they have fresh food and water twice a day, 3 times a day, whatever. And that is enough to give them the strength to be out on pasture. And if you're building up your chickens so that they can thrive on pasture, you're doing a great job. Anything else?
Last question. Is there a central location where people can connect with franchise owners?
Interesting. Yeah. So we have a private social media network. It's called the Mighty Network. If you go to AxDeReal, that's AxDeReal.com. Up in the right corner, there's going to be a little hamburger menu. That's the 3 horizontal lines. And if you go to that, it'll say, I think it says join our forum or join our social media forum or something like that. That will get you into the Mighty Network, and you will see a section in there. It's a very cool environment because it is our social media. It's private. There's no advertising. There's none of the algorithm crap that you see on Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff. This is just people like you that are interested in discussing their future, discussing how to live this life. People that are actively doing it that can help you navigate the pitfalls of doing it, getting into the Axe ecosphere. And yes, there's whole sections on ranchising where you can talk to people that are already ranchising and enjoying the fruits of that endeavor. We good?
I think so. Thank you.
Does that say 7:29? Is it 7:29? 2 hours on the spot. How do you like that?
Yeah.
Actually, we started a little late, so it's a little less than 2 hours. Hey, I want to thank you all for your attention and for checking us out. But I want to thank you for your participation. Thank you for the great questions. Like I said, fill out that interest form. If you're interested in pulling the trigger on this, we can get you into a meeting on Friday with me where you can wire the money. I can answer your final questions, help design your animal mix. And then I will happily grant you a 1-year subscription to Wanted Raw Foods curated boxes that's going to feed your family for the year while your franchise gets up and running. Hope you all have a great evening, and thanks again for participating. Good night.